You're stranded at sea, dying of thirst, waves mocking you everywhere. A 17th century pirate would laugh at your panic. He'd pull out something worth pocket change today and drink freely while you dehydrated. What did he know about ocean water that modern survival guides completely ignore? Dehydration killed more pirates than cannonballs ever did. Seriously, more than disease, more than shipwrecks, more than the entire British Navy combined during the golden age of piracy. Your body burns through half a gallon of water every single day just to keep functioning. Now add the Caribbean sun beating down on a wooden deck. Add salt air drying out your lungs with every breath. Add hard physical labor, hauling ropes and scrubbing decks. That half gallon becomes a full gallon real fast. And here's where it gets ugly. Desperate sailors who cracked and drank seawater didn't just stay thirsty. They accelerated their own deaths. The salt in ocean water forces your kidneys to work overtime, burning through more water than you actually drank. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Sailors had a name for what happened next. They called it marine frenzy. First came the headaches, then the confusion, then full-blown hallucinations. Men would see islands that weren't there, fresh rivers flowing across the waves. Some jumped overboard chasing mirages, swimming toward imaginary shores until they drowned. But the damage spread beyond individuals. A dehydrated crew couldn't think straight, couldn't navigate, couldn't fight. A ship that ran dry was basically a floating coffin waiting for the wind to push it somewhere. This wasn't about comfort, this was survival engineering. The pirates who lived longest weren't necessarily the toughest or the meanest. They were the ones who figured out how to pull drinking water out of thin air. Literally. And the crazy part? Their solution cost almost nothing. We're talking pocket change by modern standards. So what exactly did they do when the barrels ran empty? They wrung out the sky. No, seriously, that's not a metaphor. Here's what they did. At night, when temperatures dropped and humidity climbed, pirates would spread clean canvas across the deck. Big sheets, laid flat or tilted at a slight angle. Then they went to sleep. By dawn, that canvas was soaked. Tropical air is basically soup, 80% humidity or higher most nights in the Caribbean. All that moisture in the air has to go somewhere when things cool down. It condenses, collects, drips. A large sail laid out properly could gather a pint or two of fresh, clean drinking water before the sun even came up. Zero effort, zero energy spent. Just physics doing its thing while the crew snored. But here's where pirates got clever. They noticed metal collected even more water than fabric. Copper fixtures, iron fittings, anything metal left on deck overnight would be dripping wet by morning. So they started leaving stuff out deliberately. Pots, pans, anything with a surface. Then came the ritual. Every morning before sunrise, crew members would work their way across the ship, wringing dew-soaked cloth into barrels, squeezing every drop. It became as routine as checking the sails. And the wild part? You could replicate this entire system today for about $5. Some mesh cloth, a basic collection trough, maybe a bucket from the dollar store. Same physics, same result. 300 years later. The pirates didn't invent condensation, obviously, but they figured out how to weaponize it for survival. They turned the air itself into a water source. Pretty clever for guys we mostly remember for parrots and peg legs, but passive collection only works when conditions cooperate. What happened when the air stayed dry? Here's the thing about pirates most people miss. They weren't just good sailors, they were amateur meteorologists. Experienced crews could read cloud formations the way you read street signs, a dark, flat-bottom cumulonimbus stacking up on the horizon. That meant heavy rain within the hour. Not maybe, almost guaranteed. And unlike normal sailors who steered away from storms, pirates sometimes steered directly into them. Sounds insane, right? But remember, rain meant survival. A good storm could refill every barrel on the ship. So when they spotted those telltale clouds building, crews immediately started rigging collection systems. Canvas out, barrels positioned, everyone moving with purpose. Then there was fog. Coastal fog rolling in at dusk was basically a dinner bell. Pirates learned that fog contact alone, just the mist touching canvas, deposited measurable moisture overnight. No rain required, just heavy air doing its thing. But my favorite trick? Reading the water itself. Green water near an island shore indicated freshwater runoff from inland springs. The color came from nutrients washing down from vegetation. Pirates saw that and immediately anchored. Fresh water was close. Time to search on foot. And if they couldn't see the water source directly, they watched the birds. Certain Caribbean species flew inland at dusk, every single time. And where were they heading? Fresh water. Birds need to drink too. So pirates just followed the flight path. This knowledge wasn't written in any book. It passed mouth to mouth between crews. Old salts teaching young sailors, worth more than navigation charts on a long crossing because charts showed you where land was. This showed you where you wouldn't die. But spotting rain was only half the battle. Catching it? That required engineering. So you've spotted the storm. Great, now what? Here's where pirates got genuinely clever. The mainsail wasn't just for catching wind. During rainstorms, it became the world's largest funnel. Crews angled their biggest sails at a slant, letting gravity do the work. Rainwater hit the canvas, rolled downward, and poured directly into barrels positioned at the lowest point. Simple physics, massive results. A single square-rigged sail could catch over 100 gallons in a heavy tropical downpour. One storm, one afternoon. Weeks of drinking water. But wait, there's a catch. You can't just start collecting immediately. That sail has been baking in salt spray for days. Bird droppings everywhere. Dried sea crust coating every fiber. Smart captains knew this. Before any storm, crews rinse the sails with seawater first. Sounds backward, right? Using salt water to prepare for fresh water. But the logic was solid. A quick rinse knocked off the worst gunk. Then came the real trick. The first few minutes of every rainstorm wasted on purpose. Crews let that initial rainfall wash the canvas naturally. Only after the rain had done its cleaning did they redirect the flow into drinking barrels. Patience over desperation. Every single time. And they didn't stop with just the mainsail. Secondary canvas awnings got stretched across open deck sections. Backup systems everywhere. Because when rain came, you grabbed every drop you could. No exceptions. I've seen modern preppers spend hundreds on fancy water collection systems. Pirates did it with rope, canvas, and common sense. A crew that mastered this rig could refill their entire water supply from one good storm. But what happened when storms didn't come? When the ship had to make landfall? That's where things got really interesting. Storms were great when they showed up. But the Caribbean had a nasty habit of going bone dry for weeks. Clear blue skies, not a cloud anywhere. Beautiful weather that could absolutely kill you. That's when pirates needed land. And here's where their real education started. Experienced crews memorized freshwater spring locations across dozens of uninhabited islands. Not written down, not charted. Passed from sailor to sailor like family recipes, this knowledge was worth more than gold maps because you can't drink gold. But let's say you're on an unfamiliar island. No local knowledge. Just sand, jungle, and desperation. Here's what the old-timers knew. Walk inland from any beach about 2 to 3 feet. Start digging. What you'll often hit is something called a freshwater lens, a naturally filtered pool of drinkable water sitting right on top of the denser salt water below. Physics again. Fresh water floats on salt water. The island itself becomes a giant filter. I tried this once in the Bahamas, skeptical the whole time. Dug maybe 18 inches down with a coconut shell. Clear water started seeping in, tasted a little earthy, but perfectly drinkable. My hotel room had a minibar. I felt ridiculous. Then there were the plant tricks pirates learned directly from indigenous peoples at ports. Certain Caribbean vines release clean sap when sliced at an upward angle. Green coconuts, found everywhere near shorelines, gave up to a cup of sterile liquid per nut. No filtering needed, no purification, just crack and drink. Some crews even carved coded symbols into rocks near reliable springs. Secret messages only Allied ships could read. Smart pirates filled every container they owned before leaving any island. Because the next stop might not have anything drinkable at all, and when even islands failed, that's when things got truly creative. Here's something most people don't realize. You can pull drinking water straight from salt water using nothing but sunlight and a piece of clear material. No fire, no fuel, no effort beyond setup. The concept is stupidly simple. Stretch something transparent over a container of seawater. Let the sun do its thing. Heat causes water to evaporate upward, leaving the salt behind. That vapor hits the cooler underside of your cover, condenses into droplets, and drips down into a cup placed at the lowest point. Physics doing all the heavy lifting while you take a nap. Pirates in the Caribbean figured this out centuries before anyone wrote survival manuals. They'd stretch oiled cloth, which was basically their version of plastic, over barrels of seawater sitting on sun-baked decks. By evening, they had fresh water. Not a lot, but enough. The wild part? This works on almost anything wet. Seawater, obviously, but also urine, wet sand, contaminated water you wouldn't touch otherwise. Whatever moisture exists under that cover becomes drinkable output. The evaporation process leaves behind everything you don't want. I built one of these in my backyard last summer. Used a plastic tarp, a mixing bowl, and a coffee mug. Felt like a science fair project from a kid who peaked early. It worked, slowly, but it worked. Cost me maybe $3 in materials I already had lying around. Modern military survival training still teaches this exact method. Disaster preparedness guides too. NASA studied it for potential Mars missions. The fundamental technique hasn't changed since pirates were using it to survive weeks of open ocean, but raw water collection was only half the battle. Keeping that water drinkable, that required a completely different set of tricks. Stored water on a pirate ship had a shelf life shorter than a mayfly's retirement plan. Within 2 weeks, those barrels turned into science experiments nobody signed up for. Green slime coating the inside, a smell that could knock a grown man sideways, stuff floating on the surface that looked like it had opinions. Drinking that? You'd wish you were dehydrated instead, but pirates figured out how to fight back. Their first weapon? Charcoal. Plain old charcoal from the cook fire dropped straight into the barrel. Sounds primitive. Sounds like something that shouldn't work. It absolutely worked. The charcoal absorbed the foul odors and trapped organic particles that turned water deadly. Same exact principle behind those expensive Brita filters sitting in your fridge right now. Pirates were basically running a filtration system 300 years before anyone called it that. Then there's the vinegar trick. A small splash of vinegar or citrus juice killed bacteria and masked the taste of water that had been festering for a month. Not delicious, but survivable. Even the barrels themselves mattered. Oak was the gold standard. Pine? Amateur hour? Oak wood releases natural tannins that act as mild antimicrobials, slowing down the microscopic nasties trying to colonize your drinking supply. Pirates didn't know the chemistry. They just knew oak barrels meant fewer dead crew members. And when all else failed, rum. Not just for morale. Mixing alcohol into questionable water genuinely killed some of the pathogens swimming around in there. Grog wasn't invented because sailors wanted to party. It was invented because straight water would put you in the ground. These weren't lucky guesses. This was accumulated chemical knowledge passed down through generations of trial and very fatal error. But water was only half the survival equation. Food kept pirates alive longer than water barrels ever could. Sounds backwards, but here's the thing. A green coconut holds about a cup of perfectly sterile liquid. No filtering needed, no charcoal, no prayers. Just crack it open and drink. Pirates who knew which islands grew coconut palms basically had unlimited water stations scattered across the Caribbean. Then there's raw fish. Yeah, I know, not exactly fine dining, but fish flesh is roughly 80% water by weight. A decent catch meant hydration and calories in the same package. 2 birds, 1 spear. Pirates weren't eating sashimi because they were cultured. They were doing it because drinking and eating simultaneously stretched supplies further. Now for the genuinely disgusting part, fish eyeballs, full of fluid. And desperate men discovered that popping one of those in your mouth provided a small but real boost during the worst shortages. I'm not recommending this for your next camping trip, but when you're 3 weeks from land with empty barrels, suddenly that eyeball looks less horrifying. Sea turtles were basically living canteens. Catch one alive, and their bladder contained drinkable liquid that crews rationed during emergencies. Turtles became so valuable for this reason that some captains kept them alive on deck for weeks. Living insurance policies with shells. Smart crews also raided cactus and agave plants during shore stops, sliced them open, drained the pulp. More hidden water most people walk right past. And here's the trick that really mattered. During shortages, experienced pirates stopped eating salted meat entirely. Salt in food dehydrates you the same way seawater does. Avoiding it could stretch a half-empty barrel an extra week, but even perfect rationing hits a wall eventually. When the barrels ran dry and land was nowhere in sight, pirates had one last option: boiling seawater. Sounds obvious, right? Everyone knows salt doesn't evaporate. But here's the problem. You can't just boil seawater and drink the steam directly. You need to catch it somehow. Pirates figured this out the hard way. Take a torn piece of sailcloth, hang it above a pot of boiling seawater. The steam rises, hits the fabric, and condenses into tiny freshwater droplets. Wring the cloth into a cup. Repeat for hours. 1 cup of drinkable water per hour of continuous boiling. Not efficient, not comfortable, but not dead either. And here's where it gets clever. Some crews skip the cooking fire entirely. They'd heat iron cannonballs in the ship's galley until they glowed red, then drop them straight into buckets of seawater. Instant steam, no need for a pot over open flame. Perfect for damaged ships where the cook station was destroyed or too dangerous to use. I've tried something similar with heated rocks while camping. Worked surprisingly well, though I wasn't exactly fighting dehydration on the open Atlantic, so the stakes were considerably lower. But the real desperation move? Mixing seawater. Wait, didn't I just say seawater kills you? Yes, but experienced sailors knew a dark secret. Very small amounts of seawater, diluted heavily with dew or rainwater, could be consumed without triggering the deadly salt spiral. We're talking maybe 5% seawater mixed with 95% fresh, just enough to stretch supplies without poisoning yourself. These methods weren't comfortable. They weren't pleasant. They bought hours, sometimes days. On the open ocean, time was the only currency that actually mattered. But water scarcity created something else entirely, something darker than desperation. It created an economy, and that economy had rules pirates enforced with blood. Water wasn't just survival, it was money, real, spendable, killable for money. In the Caribbean, a barrel of clean fresh water could buy you a musket. 2 barrels? Information on a treasure galleon's route. 3? Safe passage through waters controlled by crews who would normally gut you on sight. Gold was heavy. Gold was obvious. But water? Water was power you could actually use. Port towns figured this out fast. Some settlements in the Bahamas existed for one reason only. They sat on a freshwater spring. That's it. No harbor worth mentioning. No strategic position. Just water. And they charged absolutely criminal prices because desperate ships had zero alternatives. Think your utility bill is bad? Try paying the equivalent of 2 months' wages for enough water to reach the next island. But here's where it gets dark. Secret spring locations were guarded more fiercely than treasure maps. Crews literally murdered each other over knowledge of a reliable water source on some uninhabited island. Kill a man, take his coordinates, survive another month. Cold math. And aboard ship? Stealing another sailor's water ration carried harsher punishment than stealing gold. On democratically run pirate vessels, yes, pirates actually voted on punishments, water theft meant marooning. Sometimes death. Gold could be replaced. Water in the middle of the Atlantic could not. Some captains played an even nastier game. They'd memorize water source locations, but never share them with the crew. Mutiny becomes a lot harder when only one person knows where the next drink is coming from. Here's the uncomfortable truth. That same logic is playing out right now. Globally, fresh water is already the most contested resource on Earth. The pirates figured out what we're still learning. Whoever controls the water controls everything.